Fish, I need a pilot.
I got the new baby now.
This can change you and that baby's life forever. We finally get to use our skills for our own benefit.
All right.
It looks like there might finally be movement on a sequel to Triple Frontier. Even though the movie didn't get a ton of recognition when it first dropped on Netflix back in 2019, it's one of those films that stuck around in people's minds. The story, the action, and of course the star-studded cast gave it staying power. And now, thanks to some very hopeful words from Charlie Hunnam, it seems like Triple Frontier 2 could actually be on the horizon. Hunnam, who played William Ironhead Miller in the movie, sat down for an interview while he was promoting Rebel Moon in 2023. In the middle of the conversation, he revealed a pretty exciting little nugget. When asked directly about the possibility of a sequel, he admitted that while nothing was fully locked in, he had just stepped up as the main producer to develop a potential follow-up at Netflix. According to him, the project was in its absolute infancy. That phrase might sound like the very beginning of something, but the fact that he's not only involved but actively leading the charge is a huge deal. He also mentioned that he still has a lot more to say about the life after life of military personnel, which shows that he sees a sequel not just as another action flick, but as a chance to keep exploring deep themes tied to the characters. That comment alone has been enough to spark a whole bunch of hope among fans, because when a cast member steps into a producing role, it usually means the project is personal. Hunnam clearly feels connected to the story, so that alone suggests this isn't just lip service, it's something he genuinely wants to see through. Of course, it's been almost 2 years since that interview, and not a ton of official updates have surfaced, but that's not necessarily a bad sign. The entertainment industry works in waves, and some projects need time to develop before the creators are ready to announce big news. Hunnam calling it infancy basically tells us that they're laying the groundwork quietly. If anything, it probably means they're making sure they have a strong story before announcing anything concrete. But that's a good thing, because nobody wants a rushed sequel that doesn't live up to the original. For those who might not remember, Triple Frontier came out in March 2019. It centered on a group of former Special Forces soldiers who team up to take down a South American drug lord and steal a massive fortune. The film wasn't just about the action, although it had plenty of that. It was also about loyalty, greed, and how military men adapt, or fail to adapt, once they leave service. The cast was stacked. Ben Affleck, Oscar Isaac, Charlie Hunnam, Garrett Hedlund, and Pedro Pascal all brought their A-game. With a lineup like that, it was bound to draw attention. Now, when it first released, the movie didn't exactly become a box office hit, partly because it only had a limited theatrical run. Netflix reportedly spent about $115 million making it, and that investment didn't really pay off at the time. But here's the thing. Streaming movies live and die by how audiences discover them over time, and Triple Frontier has had a resurgence. In fact, in late 2023, it even climbed into Netflix's global top 10, pulling in 3.6 million views in a single week. That kind of second wave is exactly the sort of thing Netflix pays attention to. It shows there's still an audience out there who not only remembers the film, but is excited to revisit it. That renewed interest is also why a sequel seems more likely now than it did back when it first came out. Because if people are watching and rewatching it years later, Netflix knows there's value in continuing the story. Streaming is all about longevity, and Triple Frontier has proven it has that. The one tricky part about pulling off a sequel comes down to the cast. Since 2019, Pedro Pascal has skyrocketed to superstardom thanks to The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. His schedule is packed, and his star power means he's in high demand. That could make things complicated when it comes to scheduling a sequel. But on the flip side, having someone like Pascal in the cast makes the movie even more attractive to audiences. If Netflix can pull it off, it'll be a huge win. Still, even without locking down every original cast member, the world of Triple Frontier is big enough to expand. The first film left plenty of open threads, especially around the themes of survival and what happens after the mission ends. And since Hunnam has said he wants to explore life after life for military men, That could mean diving even deeper into how these characters cope with the consequences of their choices. Now, looking back at what made the original so compelling, it's not hard to see why fans are excited. On paper, Triple Frontier was a heist movie. Pope, played by Oscar Isaac, gathers his old Delta Force buddies, Redfly, Ironhead, Benny, and Catfish, to rob a cartel boss. Each of them had moved on from military life into civilian jobs, but the promise of $75 million is too much to resist. From the start, it's clear that these guys are motivated by more than just doing the right thing. They're driven by greed, desperation, and maybe even a little bit of nostalgia for their old brotherhood. What really made the film stand out was how it refused to paint its characters as straightforward heroes. Instead, they were deeply flawed. Redfly especially showed how greed could corrupt even the tightest unit. But despite their moral grayness, the film made you root for them anyway, because their bond felt real and their struggles were relatable. That mix of anti-heroes and high-stakes action made for a gripping watch. The action itself was another strength. Unlike a lot of big-budget blockbusters that rely on over-the-top explosions, Triple Frontier kept things grounded. The fights and stunts felt realistic, and the setting added to the intensity. From trekking through jungles to crossing the Andes Mountains, the environment itself became part of the struggle. That realism gave the movie a unique edge compared to flashier action films. It also didn't shy away from exploring heavier themes. Friendship, greed, survival, those weren't just background notes, they were woven right into the story. The brotherhood between the men was touching at times, but it was also fragile, constantly tested by the lure of money and the trauma of their pasts. For example, Redfly's obsession with the cash became the film's turning point, showing just how destructive greed can be. And beyond the story and themes, the film excelled in technical areas too. The soundtrack was surprisingly strong, blending American rock with South American influences. Songs from Metallica, Fleetwood Mac, and even Bob Dylan added layers of emotion and grit. Meanwhile, the cinematography by Roman Vasilyanov gave the movie a striking look. Most of it was shot outdoors, and even though a lot of the jungle scenes were filmed in Hawaii, it still felt authentically South American. The helicopter sequence in particular stood out as a perfect mix of tension and realism. So, when you put all of that together, compelling characters, grounded action, deeper themes, and solid technical execution, it's clear why Triple Frontier has built such a loyal following over time. And it's also why the idea of a sequel feels so exciting. Because a sequel wouldn't just be a repeat of the first film, it has the potential to dive even deeper into these characters' lives. What happens after the dust settles? How do these men, who have seen and done so much, find meaning when the mission is over? Those questions are rich territory for storytelling, and Hunnam seems eager to tackle them. Although nothing is officially confirmed yet, all signs point to a positive direction. Netflix hasn't shut the door on the idea. Hunnam is personally invested. The audience is still interested. And the original film has proven it has staying power. So, even though we might have to wait a bit longer before seeing concrete news, the possibility of Triple Frontier 2 feels more real than ever. If the sequel does happen, it could be exactly the recognition that J.C. Chandor's original deserves. After all, Netflix has become known for bold action films like Extraction, The Harder They Fall, and Carry On. Triple Frontier fits perfectly into that lineup, and its sequel could finally give it the spotlight it missed the first time around. All in all, the future looks bright for fans. Triple Frontier may have taken the long road to becoming appreciated, but that just makes the idea of a sequel even sweeter. With Hunnam leading the charge and fans showing their continued interest, it seems like only a matter of time before the crew is back together for another adventure. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.